All right, so I'm going to be using today the data definition commands of create, which are right here, create table, as well as alter table. There's going to be a few of them. Um, Alter column, drop column, and add column. I'll attempt to add column today also. But also, uh, I'm going to talk about the constraints. So that's an important angle for me to use. If you can hold your questions until the end, unless something is really, really wrong, I'd appreciate it. So I'm going to try to be like very, very, um, I guess you could say, fluid about um, the tutorial today. And after that, we could do some Q&A. Here goes. So I'm going to start out. And if you remember what happens after I sign in, all right, here's what I get because I still have my databases and tables in there. I'm going to blow this up as well. Well, you can see that web page as well. So now, um, last time I showed you practice 2 and practice 3 and practice, all right? Here's what I want to do today. I'm going to create a table, much like the ones you're going to see in your book. So here goes. Let's imagine that we're building a business and we're trying to take orders. So I'm going to create table, and I'm going to have a person table. Or better yet, I'll make it a customer table. That's a bit better. Customer. I think I want to, there we go. Let's keep it brief. So customer's going to have the following. I'm going to create something called customer ID. And customer ID is going to be an integer, not a big integer, just an integer. And I'm going to do something I did not do last time, but whatever you do, don't try to run the table just yet. We're just like writing up the script, all right? Next, I'm going to add in another field. So I'm gonna put in name. Name is going to be a variable character, all right? Variable character, and it could be of size 50. I'm just gonna treat first and last like they're the same. Next, I'm going to, let's see, have an address. All right. And the address is also going to be a variable character. Or better yet, I think I'll just make it text. All right. Text is easier to go with. And now let's see. After that, what else should I put in here? I could at a later point in time put in things like orders and whatnot. All right. But here's what I want to make sure I do. So I'm going to come up here, customer integer. I'm just going to add a constraint. It's called not null. All right. So here's what that means. Every time I make an entry into this table, I have to make sure that at the very least, customer ID is always filled in. The others, if I don't fill them in, they're going to be not null. So let's take a look. Yes, there should be a comma after variable character. But however, make sure that when you put these constraints in, not null, that they're included with the actual data type. If not, you're going to have issues. So now, here I have my customer ID, I have my name, and I have my address. There could be other things like the payment method and whatnot. I won't get into that right this moment. All right. So I'm going to start off with this very, very naive and small table. Let's take a look at how it's different. So I'm going to run this table. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say the following. Insert into customer. And here's what I'm going to put in. So the ID number, I can make it like 1234, doesn't matter. Okay. And I can also put in the name. So I'm going to put in John. Let's see. I know I always use John Doe a lot, but whatever. Then I'm going to come down here and I am going to put in an address. This is my third input. All right. I'm going to put values right here. And for the address, let's see. Not too far. All right. Semicolon. Let's take a look at what happens. So here in customer, I now have an item that was placed in there properly. Select star from, and I'm selecting star from table customers. In case you're wondering, I'm now using my data manipulation. All right. So I'm selecting it from table customer. All right. And now just going to put in a semicolon, select everything. All right. So that's everything. Now, here's the difference. Let's suppose that I didn't put in the customer ID part. So I'm just going to insert into customer the following values. And if I do put in such a thing as null, let's just see what happens. Null is not allowed. Okay. There is an auto increment for default values. Right now, however, I'm just showing you the add and remove of constraints. All right. Today, I want to make sure that I get to discussing primary keys because that's important. So I'm just building up into that. So here we have the first case of a primary key, but here I had to alter the table. I'm going to create a second table. All right, this table is going to be called orders. So create table orders. All right, and orders is going to be as follows. I'm going to have, let's see, an order number. And my order number for its own part, I'm going to make order number as follows. Order number will be, order number is going to be an integer again, but it's also going to be a primary key. I'm not going to declare it up here. All right. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have, let's see. By the way, somebody was asking me about the name of the constraint PK customer as a primary key. In your different database systems, right? The way I'm going to use PK customer at another point in time is that it will allow me to refer to this particular primary key, kind of like a variable name. However, what you see here in this side key, sometimes you'll see the name, sometimes you won't. It doesn't really matter. This is just an alias, all right? So it's not like a strict name. But moving forward, PK customer is basically just an alias for whatever primary key they would have given a random name to. So moving forward, I have order number integer. I'm going to drop down one. I'm also going to have customer number or customer ID, person who ordered it. That's going to be an integer. All right. Then I'm going to have an item list. Okay, so this is going to be text because I don't know how large it's going to be. So text is going to do for that one. Coming down one more, let's see. What else should I put in here? So I have my customer, I have my order number, and my item list. I should make it clear that my item list is a bunch of products. I'm just saying. So I'm going to leave it there, but here's what I want to do coming down here at the bottom. I want to say the following. Primary key is order number. All right. And I want to say a few more things. So I have this constraint here. So now let's just take a look at how it looks in the create command. Before I did the alter command, I need to do the create command. So I'm going to show you how this whole thing plays out in the create command for H2. So if you take a look further down, here's where we have the column names and we repeat them over and over again. All right. But now as we finish up, we get to this part down here. So here we have, supposing that we finish our column names, we're going to have the constraint part that we can also apply. Now, for my constraint name definition, it's going to be exactly like what I had last time. Okay. And what I also need to do is put in the type of constraint that I'm going to have. Okay. So the type of constraint that I'm going to have is a primary key. Everybody get that? So now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put in constraint and the name and primary key. But what I should tell you right off the bat is that even if I just left it as primary key and the column name, the whole thing would indeed work. Take a look. So this guy right here, this would work just fine. However, if I want to have a constraint name, okay, PK order, primary key, order number, that allows me to build an alias by which I can refer to that constraint. Okay, let's take a look. Okay, so I have my primary key here, order number, and they're telling me that it's unique. All right, so now I have two tables with a primary key. You've seen both the alter syntax and you've also seen the create syntax. And I'm just gonna make sure that you know that this right here, this type of syntax with just primary key order number would have worked just fine, okay? All right, so now moving backwards one, let's get moving forward into some entries. Here we go. My first entry is gonna go as follows. I'm gonna insert into orders values. Okay, my values are going to be, let's see, I'm going to have 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. Next, I'm going to have um, hmm, my customer ID. Let's suppose that I have 0001. All right. And then finally, I'm going to have a bunch of items. All right. And that's going to do for now. So let's just take a look at what we have. All right. So that's my first order. Now let's suppose I make a repetitive uh, insertion. So as long as my first value for 5, 6, 7, 8 is repeated, this could change, has no problem with that. Another bunch of items. Take a look, I'm gonna get an error. All right, so I have a unique index or primary key violation, and it was flagged with 5, 6, 7, 8. So this is one way to keep um, our entries unique so that we don't have duplicate entries within our tables. That can be very important. We want to make sure that in certain cases, say if it were something like Social Security, you don't have the ability to spoof a very sensitive parameter. Okay. So that's the nature of the primary key. It allows us to identify uniquely entries within a table. So now, um, moving forward, um, hmm, so I'll take a look at some questions because I see that the chat room is lighting up like crazy. Um, so my primary key constraint name. Why is it primary key one? So in the sidebar, they're showing it as primary key one. That doesn't really matter to me. Um, I mean, that's how H2, you know, gives you a generic name. However, what's more important is that now I have a customized name of my own that I can use to refer to later on. It would have been a bit harder if I wanted to add or drop a key. All right. So that's why I created the constraint names that I created. That way I can easily refer to them later on. So PK customer is what I used. Um, if I were to use MySQL to hash with the entries increment normally, in order to have values increment, you actually have to use the auto increment uh, entry, right? So the auto increment type of specification that has to be set up so that your values will automatically increment. Somebody else wants to know if the customer ID wants to add more items to the item list, how would we change it? Hmm. Okay. So let's suppose I actually want to, in this case, change it. Now, in this case, it's not very difficult because I didn't really make it so that you guys would have a problem adding new things in. So I can use my update and set command, right, for this part. So I can come up here and say another bunch of items, like this is now equal to another bunch of items. Um, you're probably asking me, or you probably wish to ask me, what if I had a variable number of entries so that I can look at them one by one? Um, that would be a bit different. And I would create a separate table called product with product IDs and product numbers. I'll show you probably next time. I mean, that's a good question, but I don't want to get to the point where it's confusing. I just want to like show up the primary key and then one more key after that. Right. So if you want to change the actual values of a given, um, if you want to change the values that are inserted into a table, use update and set like we had used last week. Let me show you the grammar for update and set. So it's right here, update table name, and then I'm going to set my value to something else, right? Column name equals the following expression, all right? That's how you change its value. And so I suppose like, I could put a bunch of quoted items into my last argument, the one with the item list. However, you're probably asking me, what if I wanted to add a bunch of different items? So one thing I could do is put in a very long string and then parse it later, right? Like use a programming language to break down the strings. But that will require that I also have a delimiter. But the string handling part can be handled in my programming language of choice rather than in the table, in the database management system directly. Let's see. So now let's see, since those are all the questions, I'm going to show you why I set up these two tables the way that I did. So let's take a look together. So right now I have insert into order those values there. Here's what I need to do next. Let's suppose I wanted to link the two tables together to show that there's a relationship between the two. All right. Here I have create table orders, and orders has an order number, has a customer ID number. It also has an item list. Now, if I wanted to change it so that there would be a relationship between two tables, I'm going to have to do the following. Let's say alter table. And then I'm going to use orders, which is my table name, add constraint. And I'll call my constraint, let's see, FK for foreign key. And it's going to be called order customer. All right, now this is what I call a foreign key. Let me put it in all caps so you know it's a reserved keyword. Sorry, and to hit caps lock. So foreign key. All right, and in my foreign key, I'm going to use the following: customer ID, and I'm going to say the following: references, and I'm going to give the name of a table within the same uh, group of tables in my database, customer ID. So let's start from the top. I'll show you what it means. Okay, somebody's asking me a homework question. That really doesn't belong right now. Let me just uh, move it forward a bit because I'm trying to like make sure that the tutorial part doesn't, get off course. Um, Take a look. Here, customer ID was my primary key. All right. Now, notice how I have a customer ID here. It has the same data type. So now I'm saying that I want to add to table orders a constraint called foreign key orders customer. And I'm saying that the foreign key would reference this primary key. Now, this part right here, not necessary. All right. I'm just using it. Um, Let me show you what the commands look like. So I'm adding a new constraint. And this time the constraint is a referential constraint, not a primary key, not a check or a unique. It's a referential constraint. All right. Here's my foreign key part, the column name, then references. And I have a reference table name and the column in that table, just like what you see right here. All right. Now here are the rules for creating a foreign key. The rules are that the foreign key must always reference a primary key in another field. However, with the foreign key, it can actually be um, it can be null. It can also fail to be unique. All right, so there can be repetitions of foreign keys. A foreign key is not the primary key in a given table at all times. It's simply a reference from one table to another table. Okay, and it links the two together. So now that I have this reference, let me just run this particular command. I have a foreign key violation if I try to enter in a value that is not corresponding to a customer ID somewhere else, as you've seen before. However, notice what happens when I do change it to say Jenny's ID. I gave Jenny an ID of 4567. This is going to work this time. No problem. I can even have multiple orders with the same ID. This one has to be changed. All right, so the foreign key doesn't have to be unique. That worked too. But whatever I put into it, for the foreign key field, it has to correspond to a primary key value in the other table. So this will work also. Okay, all of those are going to work, no problem. So now, so here are the rules to remember. One is that the foreign key is going to be a key that references the primary key in another table. Not only does it reference the column, which is the primary key in the other table, but also every item that is inserted into this table with the foreign key. In the foreign key field, it has to correspond to a primary key value in that actual other table. So whatever uh, value is in the field of the primary key in the reference table must be a value in the foreign key field in the referencing table. All right. In other words, we have our values for that foreign key field constricted so that they can only match a primary key value in the primary key field for the table that we're referencing. Now, for the primary key, it for its own part cannot be unique. I'm sorry, it's for its own part must be unique, and it also cannot be null. All right. So when it's not null and unique, that allows us to uniquely identify each of our entries. So let's suppose that I had to actually create another table. Just going to create an orders to. Orders to is going to look as follows. But here's what I'm going to do. Put in orders to right there. And I'm also going to drop down one. I would like to first make order number the primary key. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say the following. So customer ID, take a look. Here's what I had before. I have constraint. I'm going to call it FK order, customer ID. All right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this part around. So I'm going to have cust ID right here. And I'm also going to have here, I'm going to change this to FK for foreign key. Let me change this to foreign. All right. And I'm going to reference my, let's see, customer table. I'll be with you guys in a second. And customer ID. Let's see. So there's some questions. Let me just answer a few. All right, let's take a look. So I'm going to create this table here. As you can see, the foreign key was created. So that's pretty much it. This is all of our different types of key references in their basic forms. All right, if you take a look at what I have here, I have a foreign key and I have a primary key. All right. And because of that, I have more than one reference here. And what it does is it allows me to be able to manage my constraints based off of the actual demands for the individual constraints themselves. So the foreign key and the primary key field won't conflict. What would cause a conflict is if I tried to have two primary keys in a single table. Each table can only have one primary key. That's a rule. You can't break that rule. I'll repeat that again. Each table must have only one primary key. However, I can have more than one foreign key. So if I did have a practice, I'm sorry, not a practice, but a product table, my product table could have a primary key that yet another foreign key in orders and orders to will reference. All right. So those are the rules there. There are going to be some other keys. I'm going to talk about composite keys as well. And there you have it. So what questions do we still have? Yeah, I'm working on the recordings. I ran out of hard drive space before I could edit it, but I'm working on them. I haven't forgotten. Yeah, and I'm going to post the lectures, but I have to like actually free up a whole lot of hard drive space for it. I didn't know I was killing it like that. And apparently I was. So I gotta like erase a lot of old videos so I can load up new ones. Because I can't really fit more videos, they're telling me. So I will be, working on them. I'll let you know when they're up. Until then, since there's no more questions, or no more questions on the material, I guess I will end here. All right. Thanks for joining and all the best in your other classes.